Hi, this is Andrea Walford, mixed media artist and founder of Paper Crafters Library. In today's art journal inspiration video, I'm going to share with you my process for creating this Soar art journal page. Now this page is quite a bit more intricate than the pages I've shared with you over the last few weeks, and it took quite a bit longer, so I ended up having to break my video in two parts. Now in part one of the video, you're going to see me start from the basic page and create the foundation of my art journal page. In part two, I'm going to show you how I add my other textural details, and then we're going to finish up the page. So let's get started with part one of this video. Now the journal I'm working in today is a little bit different than the one you've seen me use in the last 2 weeks. Rather than my Moleskine sketchbook, I have this Moleskine calendar. It's just a daily calendar that I purchased and then misplaced for months on end. And then when I finally found it, like here we are in May, and as you can see, most of it's been empty. So I thought, you know what, I love Moleskines and I didn't want to throw it away, I didn't want to waste it, so I decided to turn it into an art journal. Now because the pages are really light, you can see here how lightweight they are, they're not going to hold a lot of medium, they're not durable enough. So with this journal, what I've been doing is I've been sticking 2 to 3 pages together using my Claudine Helmuth multimedia mat, which is my favorite collage medium when I'm art journaling. So I've already gone ahead and I've stuck 3 pages together, and I had done that on the other side as well. And then I took some masking tape, as you've seen me show you in previous pages, and I put it across the seam, and that's just to help avoid seepage of whatever medium I happen to use in through the binding and onto other pages. And then I've taken my Tim Holtz tissue paper and I've covered it. And you've seen me use this Tim Holtz tissue paper already, and I actually use it quite a bit. I just absolutely love it. It creates a really nice background. So I stuck it onto my layout on top of my masking tape, just using my multimedia mat. And then I just put a little bit of gesso where some of my writing, as you can see here in some of the pages I had written in, so where that shows through, I just put a little bit of gesso to cover that. Now, I'm not really sure what I'm doing with today's page. I have a few ideas in mind. I want the theme of my page to be fly or soar. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about recently, reaching for my dreams, letting go of the ordinary, and not being afraid to stretch myself. So based on that theme, I've picked a couple of things that I think I'm going to use. I have this awesome netting that was sent to me by May Arts, which is in a blue sky color, because when I think of soaring, I think of the sky. I've chosen a few blue mediums that I have along with white, so I have my gesso that I'm going to be working with. I've picked my tumbled glass Tim Holtz Distress Stain, and then I've picked 2 colors of my golden fluid acrylics, a cobalt teal and turquoise phthalo, which is slightly darker. I really like these acrylic paints. They're more expensive than what you get at the craft store, but the quality is just unbelievable. They dry with a bit of a glossy sheen to them, and as you can see by the markings underneath, these are quite translucent as well, so you see through to the layers beneath. And when you're applying translucent product upon translucent product, you really get much more of a sense of depth and layer in your work, whether it's an art journal or a canvas, than if you use more opaque products. Now the other thing that I think I'm going to be using are these chipboard pieces of these birds. This is from a Melody Ross chipboard set, which goes along with the theme of flying and soaring. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with those yet, but that's where I'm starting with my page. So today you're going to kind of work with me. I don't often just create on the fly like this. I have been with my last few videos, and it's a real creative stretch for me because usually my journal pages can take me a really long time to do. I fiddle a lot, I think a lot, well, overthink a lot, and I hem and haw about what I'm going to do. So in filming my process, it's been a real stretch and a challenge to kind of think on the fly and you know, just work with things. I'm not the greatest go with the flow person, and this really stretches me in that area. So what you see me doing right now is I'm taking my tumbled glass Distress Stain and I'm just putting it on my tissue paper just to give me that blue base. Now, one of the things you'll notice if you look at my page, you see there's a lot of wrinkles here. When you're working with a lightweight paper like this and it absorbs the moisture in the medium, it is going to buckle and wrinkle, but I like that. I love the texture that it adds. So now that I've added my distress stain, I'm only doing the one layer, and you can already see in some places where it's buckled that it seems to absorb the distress stain a lot more, which gives you variation in color across the page, which is really cool. And then of course where I had the gesso, you don't see it quite as much. So I'm just going to give this a good dry, and then we're going to apply the netting over this. So you can see in looking at my page that as I dried it with the heat tool, the color really decreased in intensity as it dried. So I'm just going to take my distress stain and I'm going to go over this one more time, adding another coat just to deepen that blue a little bit more. And then I'm going to dry it with my heat tool in the same way that I did before. So I've gone ahead and dried my second layer of distress stain. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, and I'm just using a Claudine Helmuth 3/4 inch flat brush and that same multimedia mat that I showed you. And I'm spreading a layer of it across the top of my page. And then I'm going to use that amazing netting that I showed you earlier. On Paper Crafters Library, this week we're doing a May Art Spotlight, and as part of that spotlight and that partnership, they sent us a whole bunch of gorgeous May Arts ribbons to try out. And of course, loving texture as much as I do, and in particular texture is amazing for in art journals. You want texture. I thought this netting would make a really neat background. So I've gone ahead and I've cut my netting into pieces that are just slightly longer than my art journal page, and I'm now just holding and pressing it into the medium. I always start by pressing into the center, then I smooth out because there is a bit of a crease in the center and you do want your page to be able to fold. So I'm just going to be doing this one layer at a time, pressing my netting in and then just holding it for a few seconds, and if I find it doesn't seem to be sticking, you see here, it looks like I don't have quite enough medium, I'm going to go take more, a big gob of it, as you can see here. Well, that might be a little excessive. Well, let's see how this goes. And then I'm going to press this into it, and I'm going to spread it over the top. So I'm really sandwiching my netting in between the medium. Now I'm just going to tuck a paper towel in between or on the underside of my page, because I do want to make sure that my pages underneath don't stick together. So as you see here, I'm being very liberal with my medium, and I'm just applying that on my page, pressing down my netting, and then placing more of this on top. And where on the netting, because there's a lot of texture in the netting, any places where I see my medium kind of gathering a lot, I'm just taking my brush and I'm kind of trying to pounce that out a little bit, because I don't want that to be too obvious when it dries. Now, when you're choosing, if you're new to art journaling and you're trying to figure out what brushes you can use, if you've gone to the art store, you'll notice brushes are, there's a huge range of prices in brushes. In my art mixed media work, my brushes take a lot of abuse. You can see this is not a great way to treat your brush, and that's why I don't buy expensive brushes. My favorite brushes to work with are the Claudine Helmuth artist brushes. They come in a package for somewhere around $8, and they're good quality and it's very economical to buy. They stand up to the abuse. I leave my brushes sitting in water. And the other brush that I like to get when I want something a little bit bigger is I use these Simply Simmons, and this is a 1-inch flat brush. That brush that I just showed you, that was $4.30. So very inexpensive for a paintbrush, and it stands up to a lot of abuse. So right now I'm just holding my netting down, and I'm now going to go ahead and I'm going to do that same thing and cover my entire page with that blue netting. So I've finished applying the netting to my 2-page spread and covering it with the multimedia on top, and then I dried it and went around the edges, trimming off any overhanging excess using my scissors. So I'm now ready to start adding some of my layers of paint on top. Now the first thing I want to do is get rid of some of this absolute blueness that we have here, and I'm going to do that by using some of my gesso. So I've taken some of my Claudine Helmuth gesso. and I've put it onto my palette. And the reason I did that rather than working directly from the bottle is because I want to take a little bit of water. So I'm dipping my brush in water to water this down just a little bit so that I can get a little bit more of a wash. I don't want it to apply too thick, because one of the challenges when you're working with something as highly textured as netting is that the paint is going to have a tendency to not want to move as much. The other thing is I don't want a very opaque layer. Like if you look there, that's a little bit heavier than I want. So I'm just going to dip my brush in water. I have my water bucket off to the side and see if I can kind of spread that out a little bit. So this is my water bucket. I bought this at an art supply store when I used to take folk art painting, and I'm just dipping my brush in and trying to move some of that white away from there. So I'm just going to keep dipping my brush into the bucket, picking up just a little bit of my gesso, working from the outer edges inwards. And I'm not worrying about spreading this evenly. I just want, because I don't want to completely cover up that blue, I want to see some of it through, but I don't want it to look like just that kind of solid layer of blue. I'm trying to keep as much of the paint where it's more concentrated kind of to the edges of the page. And as you can see, as I'm mashing my brush around here, that's why I don't use really good quality brushes, because that would really damage over time a good brush. So there you can see what that page looks like, and I'm just going to follow kind of the same process with this page here, and then I'm going to take my heat tool and dry it. When you're working, whether it's a canvas, whether it's an art journal, when you're working with different colors of paints, ideally you do want to dry in between your layers if you want each color to maintain its own integrity. If you want the colors to blend, then you can leave them, you could leave it damp, but if you want each color to show up on its own, then you want to make sure that you dry it. So here you can see I'm just kind of trying to work this into my page. Now I want to start adding a little bit of a different color. This is that cobalt teal that I told you about, and I do want it to blend a little bit with my gesso, so I'm not actually drying my layer. I decided I'm not going to dry it. I'm going to take my teal and I'm just going to start working that into my page as well. And here you can see as I apply it over the white, it mixes. You start to lose some of that white and you see just the teal. So if there's any area where, let's say you feel the white's too strong when you go in with your white, you can just bring your teal in, and the blending of the two colors, it kind of mutes the starkness of the white, and then it also softens out the blue. Now really, there's no, with art journaling, there's no right, there's no wrong. It's all about experimentation and discovery. Oh, looks like that didn't stick down that well. It's experimentation, it's discovery. A lot of times I just kind of test things out in my art journal. Sometimes you'll love the results, sometimes not so much. But one of the things that I've kind of learned is that sometimes if I look at my page and it's like, oh my goodness, that's really ugly, I just keep working it and I just keep trying things until I get something I'm happy with. And sometimes you're going to find when you get through this process, it'll be almost like you're working your page, and you look at it, it's like, holy smokes, that's just getting uglier and uglier. And sometimes then you just leave it and you come back to it. I've certainly done that before, and usually when I come back to it, I have a little bit more success than I did the first time. So as you can see, if you've been watching me put the paint here as I'm kind of jabbering on, I'm keeping most of my paint concentrated around the outer edges, and then I'm trying to use my brush to pull it in. Now I keep dipping my brush off to the side into my water, trying to help me blend this out I do want to make sure my page doesn't get too saturated with water. So I think, going to now, before I add any more paint, I'm just going to go in with my heat tool and I'm going to try and dry that just a little bit. Okay, so I finished drying that. Now what I want to do is come in with a little bit of this phthalo turquoise. This is a very intense blue color, so I'm not going to use a lot, and I'm hoping that I don't completely wreck this. I'm just going to dip my brush into a little bit of it, and then I'm going to bring it along. Ooh, that's nice. I like that color. You can see how it deepens. I'm just going to bring that in a little closer so you can see how it kind of deepens that color. Now, because it is such an intense color, I don't want to apply too much at a time because it's really hard to pull back whenever you add too much. But that's really nice. I like that color a lot. Each time you see me kind of move my hand to the right, I'm dipping my brush into my water bucket to try to pick up some water, just to keep my paint from getting too concentrated on the page. And that's because the mesh, because it kind of traps the paint inside, it makes it a lot harder to kind of spread it out. So I think I'm just gonna start trying to bring some of that color down. I don't even know how well the camera picks that up, whether you can see how it just starts to kind of fade into the layer beneath it. It looks really neat. And then I'm just going to do this exact same thing that you see me doing. I'm just going to do it on this other side. Zoom out a little bit again. So you can tell I'm getting a little bit impatient. I'm not doing it in as small quantities as I had before. I'm just kind of trying to get this all around the edge, pull it in a little bit, but I'm still trying to keep the center of my page lighter. This kind of teal, these are some of my favorite colors to work with. Now I think I'm just going to kind of come across in a few different places. I don't want to spread all the way down. Okay, I'm going to dry that, and then I think I may come back in with a little bit more white, just so that you can see the variation a little bit more. Okay, I've dried that. So now I'm just going to try to come back in with a little bit more white, and I just want to apply a light touch to that. I don't want to have any like real obvious gobs of white on my page. I just want this to simulate, kind of simulate a sky is what I'm trying to do with this, where you see different intensities in the color. A sky is not just one color when you look at it. It's blue, but it's different shades of blue. And I have my palette off to the side, and I'm just picking up very small amounts. I don't want, again, just to end up with any big areas where I have tons of white. And then I think I want a little bit more of that turquoise color. This time not so much muted out with the white. Whoops, I dipped in my blue there. Okay, I think I'm going to leave this for now. I could keep going and going. It's kind of fun just adding the different colors of paint. And I don't know there if you can just see the intensity of color. I don't know if the camera really picks up how gorgeous and rich it is. I really like how it looks. But I'm going to dry this and then we're going to go in and start adding texture using a variety of other means.